let me explain why I'm making this video. Resource collection was boring, there needed to be a UI change, art was at a standstill, and overall the direction of the game wasn't really exactly what I wanted. Bears? Don't like them. Walls? Don't like them. Maybe. I'll think about it. Factions? Okay, I do actually want factions. If you're confused, good. Here's the thing. I took a break. Yes, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It was like a week break, maybe 2 weeks. Let me re-explain my initial idea for how this game should go. I like RTS games. RTS stands for real-time strategy, by the way. But I feel like unless you've played an RTS game before, there's quite a barrier to entry when it comes to control. I'm not removing all of the button mashing, but it's a lot easier to mash 5 buttons than it is 100, so when it comes to picking up a game easily, less controls usually equals easier to learn. Okay, that's the initial idea. Now let me show you what an absolute blast this game is right now. Just gonna mine this real quick. Let's get the next resource. Okay, let's mine this one real quick. Let me show you what improvements I got cooking up in my smooth brain. The new gameplay will focus your character around grabbing things and throwing them. Grab resources, throw them. Grab players, throw them. Grab villagers? We'll get to that in a second. So, when you collect resources, you're picking up a tree or a sheep or a rock and bringing it back to your base. And now that you have this resource at your base, let's think about what happens. I could just put it down and have our resources go up. Ew, gross, yuck, no, too normal. I wanted to have more possibilities for research upgrades when the time comes, and the only thing I can really think of to improve that is making it so each one is like more resources. No thanks, that doesn't sound good. So first change, I made a place to put all the resources down, which we'll call a processing area. And the processing area has a maximum storage for resources and a processing time. So when you put the item in the processing area, you're not getting the resource right away, but it's taking time to process the item into its respective resource. After the processing time finishes, it gives the player the amount that was stored. Here's why the maximum storage mechanic is so cool. Villagers make it cool. Villagers are now a thing. You can walk to buildings and press the interact button to purchase a villager. These villagers are bound to their respective processing areas and die with the building. They also can't be targeted or killed. So I felt like that was a good change because, I don't know, it'd be a lot harder to have a lot of control around moving your villagers and moving your units and deciding whether they die or not. I just didn't like it. The only thing you can do with them is throw them. Yeah, no, that's real. That's the actual sound effect that I have in the game at the moment. A nice little placeholder touch. Villagers grab resource, return resource. It's pretty simple. They can't return resource because storage is full. They wait. They wait and be sad. Turns out the villagers were also getting sad when I picked up a resource block, when they would go for it. And then when they would go back and be sad, they would block every other villager from dropping off resources. Very cool. These villagers and maximum storage additions combine well, I think, because you're managing the villager count and storage you have at the same time, and you kind of have to go back and forth. You get too many villagers, and they all will wait to deliver their resource because your storage will always be full. Inefficient use of spending. You get too many processing areas, you have too much storage that never is full. Inefficient use of spending. See what I'm getting at here? You want the perfect little balance of storage and villagers. Okay, by this point you're probably wondering, Max, why is everything 2D and also kind of look like shit? Well, glad you asked, Jeremy. Someone's name's gotta be Jeremy. Everything looks the way it does because I wanted to make a minimum viable product at first, which basically means that I want everything in the game working before I work on too much graphically. And most everything is 2D now because A, don't like 3D modeling and animating, and 2, I can make 2D things faster than I can 3D things. Before, in my last game, not my last game, the current game technically, before, the art was kind of just like, search on Unity for something that looks cool and in the style that I wanted, download it, use it. but that restricts the ideas I have for the game to whatever I find in the asset store, which is not very cool. But now I can draw things that I want to put in the game, and it's much easier for me to make more things for the game. There's an argument to be had here that it's easier to 3D animate than it is to 2D animate, and you can reuse more assets because of like animations and rigging. Just whatever. I feel like I have more control over making 2D assets, and I feel more comfortable. It's always whatever. Buildings will maybe still stay 3D. Either that, or I can do a bit of 3D modeling and just paint like textures for the style that I'm going for. We'll figure that out when the time comes. I'm not really sure. I also have some UI game design for all you game designers out there. Feel free to speak up down in the comments if you have better ideas. But here's the idea. Since I now have a storage system in all of the processing areas, I wanted a way of displaying how much storage you have without making it too obstructing. Initially, I thought I could just put some icons over the buildings whenever you run by to indicate how much storage is being used. But once you get a couple buildings, I think it becomes a bit too much work, and I'd rather have people manage their storage in a glance rather than like walking to different places and seeing what's inefficient. And then I was like, I can just put like a little storage bar up next to the resource counter for how full each storage is. This is a bit much, but I dialed it down. So now I have the storage mounts displayed, but there's still one problem: the processing time. There are questions that need to be answered. Do I have different processing time for each building? If so, how do I display the processing time for each building? Do I have little numbers that tell me which buildings are actively producing and which ones aren't? But then you're making the players read little numbers on their screens when it's already a 4-player split screen game? No, scratch that. Eventually, I decided on a combined processing time that just continually runs. My way of displaying this is by highlighting the back of the resources area. This will fill up depending on the amount of time left for processing, and then when it reaches the end, you get all the resources that you've stored in your storage. This total processing pool also makes for good future upgrades, because then we're just back to managing spending with not enough villagers and too quick of processing time. As for the rest of the UI, it's pretty basic right now, not much going on. Also, with the new focused grab and throw mechanic, I thought about changing the building mechanic, so when you buy a building, it would give you a crate, and then you would place the building, but to place the building, you would throw the crate. My opinion, looks pretty cool, but in testing, it just opens up a bunch of new bugs and edge cases that kind of overcomplicate things. Like what happens when I throw the box into the rest of my buildings? Does it just overlap and place down anyways? Does it bounce around and eventually settle in a place where you didn't want it to be? Can I throw it from anywhere? What if it phases through the floor accidentally and it just turns into wasted resources? That would suck. See what I mean? It's much simpler and clearer to go with a basic like placement mechanic of just like place building where you're standing. Yeah, and that's about all I wanted to explain. I'm trying to work on a game design document, or at least a bit of one. It's pretty bare bones right now. I'll share the link if anybody's interested in making comments on the document. Might be helpful for a way of taking feedback. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. That's it. Bye. Okay, bye. I'll post again in another year. Bye. This may have been a bad idea to restart the game. Bye. Love you. Bye.